We're here today to look at Steel Seed from Storming a Cup and ESDigital Games. Steel Seed is a single-player stealth action adventure, basically set in the far future, on some sort of technological-based world, and you play as Zoe alongside a flying drone that seems to be mostly sentient, but named Kobe. And as far as I can tell, that's the only actual entity you interact with through most of the game after this intro right here. And you basically wake up inside a facility, unsure what happened to you, and essentially all hell breaks loose as this warship descends basically on the planet, and a bunch of mechanical, AI soldiers that remind me of kind of like feral Necrons from Warhammer 40,000 come down, and apparently with the need to destroy something or just attacking. Not really sure their reason for striking, but essentially all mayhem is breaking loose, and the stages themselves are quite linear once you actually get into playing, and it does require you to use some stealth. But if you're like me and get a little too impatient, it's not uncommon to essentially rush them and start fighting them in mass. Something about the enemies you face, the world, and the just general mechanics very much reminds me of Hellpoint from Tiny Build and Cradle Games. Overall, the mechanics and control of the game quite simple. Visually, you have some really cool effects. Definitely not the best game out there for an indie title, but also far from the worst. Also, so definitely room for improvement there, but they're still far and above many other options out there. And from what I remember playing Hellpoint, there wasn't much of stealth to that game. It was more just general hack and slash from a third-person perspective, where with this one, you do have to rely on a bit more stealth in order to better survive. And so far, I either haven't noticed any health pickups anywhere, or when I did, just completely overlooked them because it was times when I had full health. And this one seems to be a bit more unforgiving when it comes to rushing into things and making a mistake there. But if you can time your attacks right, you're not really going to need much in terms of those health packs of any sort, if there are any, just because of the fact that you're going to be tearing up those enemies pretty effectively. One thing I did like is those dragonfly-looking robots, and kind of look like a cross between a dragonfly with their wing shape and kind of like fireflies at the same time, and can't tell what their purpose is whatsoever. but it is kind of satisfying to jump up and slash one when you have the opportunity, and then basically just devolve into just sparks. And hurting them doesn't seem to do you any good. Not hurting them doesn't either. So it is kind of satisfying to be able to do that. Now here is about where we're going to see that worship arrive. Now I really like that look of that tree in the background, and the contrast between the technological advancement and having this natural entity out there but covered in lights. I think was a really nice touch to the world itself.
That's a weird name for a robot.
Now, probably my biggest complaint about this is through most of the dialogue, you're pretty slow moving, or don't really have much control, if any.
It feels so light.
But most of it is going to be centered really around those times where you're not having to do anything other than just kind of press on. It would have been nice if there was more of a blend of that action while doing the dialogue as well. Maybe having more interactions between the drone and Zoe, I think would have definitely added more to the gameplay.
It feels all too natural.
But here you can see it's got some of the common arcade tropes and mechanics. The ledge sliding, scooting, jumping to help scale a sheer wall. And I do like, though, how natural the controls feel right off the bat, using those well-known and established mechanics. Now, overall, with my playstyle, again, I mentioned I'm more of a kind of run and gun, charge right in, and start hacking everything apart type player.
I really don't feel like I should
The stealth aspect, it wasn't very tedious, but just like most games where you're having to be stealthy, I get bored and kind of screw it up for myself after just a little bit, and
These constructions are gigantic.
end up triggering the guards or soldiers or whatever to come on the attack when I could have still avoided them had I been patient. But as my wife will tell you, patience has never been my strong suit. And so for me, that aspect of the game did kind of detract from the overall experience. Looking at the game, I was hoping for more fighting in general, more brawling opportunities, but not so much with what I got. This was more kind of explorer platforming mixed with sneaking and the occasional stabbing, and not much else. But overall, I thought it wasn't bad. I did feel that with what I wanted from the game versus what I got, and the overall experience, I think maybe the $40 price tag probably a little steep. I think that had this been closer to 20 or even 15, I think that would have been much more fair for what you're getting. But of course, I do understand the cost of developing the game is going to be up there, and you're going to have a lot of other expenses and stuff with maintaining the servers and such like that. So you kind of need to justify that cost on that end. So, from that perspective, maybe it's worth it. I'm not really sure, how much went into this financially, but, for me, this would have been a wait for a sale as opposed to getting it outright. But right here, though, from what you can see, the effects and the explosions and all the other stuff going on definitely fit more with the vibe I was looking for. But it's just you running and jumping instead of you participating in the combat. But again, overall, game wasn't bad. It definitely is one that I can see myself playing again, but not one that I'm going to be overly excited to come back to. I did like the graphics. I really like the look of this boss-looking entity. I thought that was really cool, and at least as far as I've gotten into the game, have not had the chance to experience it again. So hopefully there will be more of that, but or at least things like that. But it is entirely possible that I just haven't gotten far enough into the game to experience the type of stuff that I want to see and the type of experiences I want to have. But the overall experience just kind of fell a little short for me. So that's it for today. Thank you guys, as always, for watching. And I'm going to go ahead and crank up the audio so you can experience more of the game. And let us know what you thought. If you've played this, did I just not give the game enough time? Or, do you agree with my opinions on this one? Definitely curious to see what you guys have to say. But hopefully, at least watching and being able to hear the game, you'll experience more of it that you'll find interesting and maybe even enjoy. But catch you guys next time. Thanks as always for watching.
Taking cover. Taking cover. That's gonna be useful. You think? Get out of here! Go! I'm slipping!